Chapter 5, Contest for the Chief Seat. The classroom was spacious, easily accommodating up to 80 people, though only about half were seated now. The front held a blackboard against walls, painted a soft white, a clear indication that this would be our learning space going forward. I found a seat towards the back and settled in, with the Fire brothers sitting next to me. The bell rang, and a woman in her mid-20s, around 26 or 27, entered the room. She wasn't very tall, had shoulder-length black hair that flowed elegantly, and possessed a beautiful and graceful appearance. She seemed to emanate a gentle demeanor. Clearing her throat, she proclaimed loudly, "Students, settle down. Let's begin the class." Her voice was crisp and listening to it was remarkably soothing. I was taken aback by how young the teacher was. This was quite unexpected. The classroom fell silent. First, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Zhuang Jing, your homeroom teacher from now on. I'll be mainly responsible for magic-related courses. I hope everyone can cooperate actively, work hard in your training, bring glory to our academy, and strive for excellence in our Class 6 of the Magic and Martial Arts Year 1. If anyone has questions about magic, feel free to come to me. I thought to myself, it looks like this teacher is quite approachable. To be able to teach new students at this age, she must have extraordinary skills. Next, let's have each of you introduce yourselves, starting from the first row on the left. The first student in the leftmost row was a girl, who if she were a man, could be described as robust and hefty. Standing at an impressive 180 centimeters tall, her waist was likely not much smaller. Using the trendy slang, one might say she resembled a globe. Unfazed, she promptly stood up and said, "Hello, Teacher Zhuang, and greetings to all my fellow students. My name is Feng Wan. I've learned some fire magic and a few ancestral martial arts techniques. I hope we can share and exchange knowledge in our future studies." Omitting the rest of her lengthy speech, wow, she sure loves to talk, it just goes on and on. Even Teacher Zhuang couldn't hold back anymore, saying, "All right, Feng Wan, you can stop here. Next." With that, the plump Feng Wan sat down, seemingly unsatisfied and eager to continue. Following her was a slender and petite boy. Compared to Feng Wan, he was a stark contrast. He stood up and, with a hoarse voice, introduced himself, "I'm Long Zhuang. Please take care of me from now on." Finishing his sentence, he promptly sat back down. Finally, it was my turn. I stood up, attempting to keep my voice gentle, and introduced myself. "My name is Lei Xiang." Many of the girls in class threw flirtatious glances my way due to my tall stature and handsome appearance. While handling that was fine, I inadvertently caught a wink from Feng Wan, and it almost made me vomit my last night's dinner. I managed to suppress the surge of nausea and quickly took my seat. Clearly, the homeroom teacher was also intrigued by me. She inquired, "Lei Xiang, have you learned anything before?" I reluctantly stood up again, but I was no longer going to look around nervously. I met Teacher Zhuang's gaze and replied, "I've learned some boxing and combat energy techniques." "Oh, haven't you learned magic?" "I haven't." "Well, you'll have to work hard then, catching up with your classmates." "Yes, teacher." The Fire brothers introduced themselves after me, leaving an indelible impression with their identical appearances. All right, everyone has introduced themselves. I hope that moving forward, you'll treat each other with respect, love, unity, and progress. Next, we'll be selecting a class representative who will help me manage the class. Let's discuss how we should conduct the selection. A student named Wood stood up and suggested, "Teacher, if I recall correctly, it seems like every class in the academy has a chief student. How about we also have a competition to choose the chief student, and then let them be the class representative? This way, it might be easier for everyone to accept." Teacher Zhuang nodded and smiled, "That's a good suggestion. Do any of the other students have different ideas?" Most students expressed agreement, and those who didn't remained silent, likely unable to offer a better solution. Following this, Teacher Zhuang announced, "In the next class, we will all gather at training field number 4 and select the class representative through a competition." Class dismissed. During the break, I quietly asked the Fire brothers beside me, "Can we abstain from this?" What's the point of being the class representative? It might affect our training. Firexing replied, I don't think being class representative will affect our training. I've heard that if you build good relationships with the teachers as class representative, you can learn more from them. There's a special group called the Heavenly Dragon Group, and only chief students from 2nd grade onwards have the privilege to join. It's said that you can learn more advanced techniques there. The academy has 6 grades, with each grade having around 6 classes, so the Heavenly Dragon Group probably has around 30 members. They are the true elite of the academy. So, being class representative actually has benefits. At the very least, it might provide better learning opportunities. It seems I shouldn't give up just yet. During the break, there was no time to rest. I followed the crowd straight to training field number 4. Located behind the main building, this field was reserved for the magic and martial arts class trainees. The girls in the class were chattering, and amidst their faint voices, I could faintly hear my name. Instinctively, I touched my face. Was I really that handsome? Several fairly attractive girls tried to get close to me, attempting to charm me with their looks. However, they were not at a level that would move me. Each of them received a cold response from me. Finally, we arrived at the destination. Training field number 4 was housed within a large building. It was surrounded by 5 tiers of bleachers that could accommodate around 400 to 500 people. In the center lay a large arena with dimensions of 20 meters by 20 meters. Teacher Zhuang ascended the arena and announced, "Great, now let's proceed with the draw. Are there any volunteers who would like to abstain?" Yes, there are. Surprisingly, over half of the students were volunteering to abstain, with a higher proportion among the girls. After taking a tally, Teacher Zhuang found that there were exactly 16 participants left. They were divided into 8 pairs through a draw, with the winners advancing and the losers being eliminated. My first opponent turned out to be Firexing. He made a helpless gesture toward me, saying, "Lei Xiang, let's go. Let's spar first." I nodded and stepped onto the arena. Firexing drew his longsword and said, "I won't go easy on you. You have to give it your all." I responded, "Let's do it. Great fire god, bestow upon me endless flames." As Firexing chanted, his longsword gradually turned red, emitting a scorching heat. I remained motionless, waiting for his move. With a loud roar, Firexing swiftly charged at me, slashing down with his sword. I lightly sidestepped, not completely avoiding his attack. The blade struck my shoulder, and Firexing quickly retracted his strike, concerned about hurting me. However, the momentum was too great, and the blade infused with fiery energy struck my shoulder with a thud. In fact, from the force of his strike, I knew he wouldn't be able to harm me. I intentionally let him hit me. My shoulder felt only a minor sensation, as if it had been lightly burned. I smiled at him, lifted my left hand to catch his longsword, and with my right hand, delivered a palm strike. Firexing felt as if his sword had struck solid ice rather than my body. I had caught his sword, and its blazing blade couldn't budge an inch. The blade filled with fiery energy couldn't even cut through my palm. In astonishment, he was struck by my palm and sent down from the arena. The entire process took only a few seconds. I mainly used the principle of redirection, without causing any harm. Firexing landed below, still unable to believe what had just happened. I ignored him and looked up to observe the ongoing match on the arena. Firexing and Fengwan were already engaged in combat. Fengwan wielded a massive hammer, swinging it with ease, effortlessly generating a powerful wind. The heavy hammer seemed as light as a feather in her hands, and it was infused with fire magic. Despite her seemingly bulky build, she moved swiftly, evading Firexing's attacks and gradually cornering him. The gusts created by her swinging hammer prevented Firexing from approaching within 3 meters. Firexing only used his longsword to test and release some fire magic. This chubby girl possessed exceptional strength. Firexing sighed, "Is she even a woman? She's terrifying." In a calm tone, I said, "Your younger brother is going to lose. He can't even utilize his advantages." Sure enough, right after I finished speaking, Phyrexing's sword was sent flying by Fengwan's massive hammer. The hammer stopped just 3 inches above his head, leaving Phyrexing visibly pale with fear. With an air of triumph, Fengwan chuckled, "You lost." She became the second person to enter the top 8. In just one class, the top 8 had been determined. My next opponent was a male classmate named Luo Lei. He specialized in using a spear, and from my observation, while his spear techniques were cunning, his strength was lacking. In the second round, first match, Luo Lei and I simultaneously entered the arena at Teacher Zhuang's announcement. Luo Lei said, "You won too easily just now. I won't give you that chance." I coldly snorted and didn't respond. If he wasn't holding back, it's either he underestimated his opponent. I won't make the same mistake as him. Alright, let me show you true skill. Watch my spear technique, Star River Spread. As he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and his 2-yard-long spear conjured countless dots of light, launching them at me. Not a bad name, and the spearhead emitted the sound of combat energy. I couldn't discern where he intended to strike. His strength indeed surpassed that of Phyrexing. I raised my arm to shield my eyes and activated the thunderous armor chi to envelop my entire body. My clothes brimmed with a robust aura, and I felt a slight tingling sensation as Luo Lei's Star River Spread struck me. If not for my formidable defense, I might have been left with injuries, although my clothes couldn't escape unscathed. Finally, I charged to within 3 meters of Luo Lei. I leaped high into the air and roared, "Roaring Thunder Descends." This was the first time I used the Roaring Thunder 13 strikes in combat since leaving the Orc Emperor's city. In the air, I exuded an overwhelming aura. My large fist appeared to grow even bigger in Luo Lei's eyes. He felt a surge of potent energy, and it seemed as though every avenue of evasion was locked down by my punch, leaving him unable to dodge. Luo Lei clenched his teeth and put all his strength into thrusting his spear at me. In truth, the moment I leaped, I knew I had won. No matter what, he couldn't withstand my full-powered strike. My right fist, carrying a formidable combat energy, collided with Luo Lei's spear. There was a sound akin to shattering as Luo Lei was propelled out of the arena by my immense strength. His spear shattered into pieces, scattering all around. If I hadn't withdrawn most of my combat energy at the last moment and converted the explosive force into a pushing force, he might not have seen the sun rise again. I stood on the platform, hands behind my back, radiating an air of, "Who dares challenge me?" I coolly said, "Now you should understand how lucky you are. Sorry for wrecking your spear." Below the platform, Luo Lei hadn't sustained any significant injuries, realizing that I had held back intentionally. He moved resentfully to the side. The class teacher blinked and thought, "This Lei Xiang possesses such formidable strength." Knowing that Luo Lei's stellar nebula spear techniques were somewhat renowned even before coming to the academy, he should have been among the top students in the class, or even the grade. But he was defeated by Lei Xiang. She was just thinking this when I spoke, "Teacher, should you announce my victory?" Teacher Zhuang finally snapped back to attention and hurriedly said, "Lei Xiang wins and advances to the semi-finals." I jumped down from the platform, and the Fire Brothers immediately ran over. Phyrexing said, "Lao Lei, you're truly impressive. Your punch just now was so beautiful. It seems the class leader position belongs to you. Teach me." I said, "My martial arts might not be suitable for you to learn. You should focus on improving your own skills." Phyrexing met a brick wall and looked a bit vexed. I ignored him, walked to a corner, and began meditating. Since the matches were scheduled to conclude today, conserving energy was crucial. Although I had defeated Luo Lei earlier, it hadn't been as easy as it seemed. The ground spikes had caused me some minor injuries, and the battle had drained a considerable amount of my stamina. If my next 2 opponents were as skilled as Luo Lei, becoming class leader would be quite challenging. I thought to myself, I absolutely can't allow my opponents any chance to use magic in the next match. I need to strike first and seize the advantage. I sat in meditation, quietly focusing on restoring my energy, reaccumulating the thunderous armor chi, and tuning out all the distractions in the arena. After a brief period, I felt my energy gradually returning to its peak state. I took a deep breath and stood up. Walking to the side of the platform, I caught a glimpse of the final moments of another match. Fengwan was swinging her giant hammer and had sent her opponent, along with their sword, flying off the platform. Her strength was truly terrifying. The class teacher announced, Fengwan wins. The quarterfinals are over. Now, let's begin the semifinals. In the first match, Lei Xiang against Fengwan. Contestants, please enter the arena. Was it my turn already? It seems I meditated for quite a while. Stepping onto the platform, I positioned myself on one side. As a gentle breeze brushed my face, a blur of movement, and suddenly, there was someone standing opposite me. The speed was astonishing, and I couldn't help but be amazed. This was Fengwan, with a well-proportioned build, holding a longsword in hand. He smiled and said, I watched your previous match. I know you're strong, but I've devised a way to deal with you. Save the chatter and come at me. To prevent him from using magic, I initiated an attack for the first time. I shot forward with my left foot and launched a punch. A powerful combat energy enveloped Fengwan, causing his clothes to rustle noisily, but just as the punch was about to land, Fengwan suddenly vanished from sight. My incredibly powerful punch hit empty air. He had evaded my attack within my combat energy field. Before I could react, a sharp gust of wind struck me from behind. I didn't dodge, but turned around and used my chest to block the attack. I immediately countered with another punch. A wind arrow accurately hit my chest, but again, my punch struck air. Fengwan stood on the other side of the arena, surprised, and said, Your defensive strength is truly impressive. You can take hits from my attacks with such intensity. Fengwan whirled around me at high speed, intermittently launching magic attacks like wind blades and wind arrows. I swung my fists in all directions, but my efforts were in vain. My thunderous armor chi had insufficient reach and couldn't effectively threaten him. Oh, right, I can integrate my dark magic into the combat energy, just like how I blocked my father's attack last time. I stood at the center of the arena and allowed his wind magic to assail me. My clothes were torn even more by his wind magic, revealing my undershirt and my sturdy biceps. I silently observed his movements, gathering dark magic within me. An icy and penetrating sensation flooded my body, heightening my senses considerably. At this moment, while attacking, Fengwan was contemplating. If this continues, I might not be able to break his defense. My magic and combat energy might be depleted before I can finish him off. I don't know what he's done, but he's so sturdy. No, I need to use my ultimate move. With this thought in mind, Fengwan shouted, Gale Sorcerer Wolf Sword. He concentrated all his combat energy into his longsword and used wind magic to accelerate himself, charging toward me. He spun in the air at high speed, and when he was 5 meters away from me, his combat energy was already causing a tingling pain on my skin. If he pierces me with that, even with my defense, I might still get hurt. I shouted, Bring it on. Concentrating my dark magic, I used my fist to face his attack. A black and white mixed combat energy burst forth as I struck, determined not to lose in terms of strength. At the moment of impact, Fengwan unexpectedly twisted to the left, evading my deadly punch. Nevertheless, his sword still lunged towards my chest. He had manipulated wind magic to change his trajectory, and no matter how I dodged, he was able to track and catch up. In this dire moment, my mind inexplicably calmed. I clearly sensed his attacking trajectory. I roared, thunderous fury erupts, and unleashed a sky full of fist shadows, blocking all his possible escape routes, forcing him into a heat-and clash with me. Fengwan hadn't anticipated that I possessed such a technique, and now he had no way to avoid it. He gritted his teeth and accelerated his charge. Boom! Sword and fist finally collided in midair. I wouldn't accept losing in terms of strength. However, due to the dispersal of my power, I had a disadvantage. Though my absolute strength was greater, I still suffered a loss. My undershirt was torn open by the combat energy released from Fengwan's sword, leaving a deep half-inch gash on my chest. Blood oozed from the wound, trickling down my chest, while my meridians were also impacted to some extent. I panted heavily, kneeling on one knee and supporting my body with my hand. This was the first time I had been injured since leaving the Orc Emperor's city. Fengwen seemed to be in slightly better shape on the surface, but he too was heavily fatigued. His sword, which couldn't withstand the tremendous force from before, was now only half its original length. He also knelt on one knee, using the broken sword to support himself. His meridians had suffered severe damage from my formidable strength, and a cold sensation spread through his entire body. He was frantically using his combat energy to counter the invading dark magic. Using my left hand, I stopped the bleeding on my chest, momentarily blocking my meridians. I barely stood up from the ground, swaying before finally regaining my balance. I questioned my father's technique of trading power for precision for the first time and realized the importance of skill. Now, winning seemed exceedingly difficult. My stamina had been heavily drained, and my chest wound added to my troubles. A sharp pain stabbed through me with the slightest movement. Cold sweat had soaked through my undershirt. Fengwen also struggled to stand up, asking, "Should we continue fighting?" A wry smile appeared on his face. I smiled bitterly. "If you can still launch an attack, then I've lost. It's a draw." It seems Fengwen has lucked out. With this final exchange, both of us collapsed backwards at the same time. The class teacher quickly stepped onto the platform, glanced at our injuries, and relievedly said, "Both injured? Quickly, classmates, take them to the infirmary." Where is this? The scent of medicine is strong. I struggled to open my eyes and attempted to sit up, but a sharp pain surged from my chest the moment I moved. I had to lie back down. I felt my chest wrapped in thick bandages. Suppressing the intense pain, I managed to turn my head slightly. Fengwen was lying on the bed next to me. This should be the infirmary. I activated my dark magic to examine my meridians. Several of them in my chest were blocked. Thankfully, my thunderous armor chi had absorbed most of the combat energy, otherwise, it could have been trouble if my heart meridian was affected. Slowly, I cleared the blocked meridians using my dark magic. After some time, I heard someone entering the room. These two kids still haven't woken up. It's just a class leader position. Why did they go all out? If they wanted to go all out, they should have waited for the grade-wide competition. Now, this is great. Just at the beginning of the school year, they're both lying in the infirmary. It was Teacher Zhuang's voice. I felt a cold hand on my forehead. It's okay, no fever. There shouldn't be any inflammation. Uncontrollably, a warm feeling surged within me. Why was she so concerned about me? Was it just because I'm her student? What's wrong with Fengwen? He shouldn't have injuries as serious as Lei Xiang's. But why hasn't he woken up yet? His body feels so cold. Teacher Zhuang's anxious voice came through. I had cleared most of the blocked meridians. I opened my eyes and saw Teacher Zhuang sitting on Fengwen's bed, her hand on his head. I weakly said, "Teacher, he was affected by my dark ice chi. I have to be the one to dispel it." Actually, of course, it was dark magic. Lei Xiang, you're awake. I've never heard of your dark ice chi, but it's quite impressive. How do you dispel it? Give me his hand. The beds weren't far apart, just an arm's length. I placed my hand on Fengwen's wrist and slowly absorbed the invading dark magic from his body. Black wisps of energy gradually flowed from his hand back into mine. I felt no exertion but instead sensed my dark magic growing. My energy also improved a bit from when I had just woken up. Teacher, he should be fine now. He just needs some rest. These magic skills of yours are quite remarkable. It seems only you can dispel it. I thought Fengwen would wake up before you. What were you two thinking, fighting to the point of endangering your lives? I was considering either of you for the class leader position, and now Fengwen has taken it. You should save your strength for the grade-wide competition and bring honor to the class. Why fight amongst yourselves? She could really talk, going on and on. While she was talking, I suddenly felt a pang of pain in my head, and it snapped me back to reality. I hurriedly said, "Oh. Sorry, teacher, how long have I been out?" It's been a day and a night. Just on the first day of school, 2 of you ended up in the infirmary. The principal reprimanded me for it. Teacher Zhuang's face showed signs of anger. A day and a night? My poor black dragon must be starving. Teacher, could you take me outside for a bit? Why go outside? You need to rest and recover from your injuries. I have a horse in the academy's stable. I want to feed it. It hasn't eaten since yesterday. Teacher Zhuang retorted, all right, rest well. I'll go feed it for you. This is so troublesome. Saying that, she turned to leave. No, teacher, my horse only eats what I feed it. I'm afraid you won't be able to. Teacher Zhuang frowned. Why so troublesome? Fine, wait here. I'll find a wheelchair to take you there. It should work, right? She was quite resourceful, even if she wasn't very skilled. She returned with a somewhat old wheelchair. I attempted to sit up, but a pang of pain in my chest made me fall back onto the bed. Teacher Zhuang said, it's okay, I'll help. She picked me up effortlessly. As she held me, a refreshing fragrance reached my nose, and I felt a bit dazed. She, at just around 5 feet 3 inches, was embracing my 6 feet 7 inches body. It was inevitable for some parts to touch, stimulating my nerves. Seeing my intoxicated expression, Teacher Zhuang laid me on the wheelchair and scolded, what are you doing? Feeding my horse or not? She thought to herself, this little pervert is enjoying my embrace. Reminded of this, her face turned red. She thought, what's gotten into me? He's my student, after all. I had no idea about the turmoil in her heart. My head throbbed, and I regained clarity. I quickly said, sorry, teacher. Let's go. Teacher Zhuang pushed the wheelchair to the stable. I hastily fed the well-prepared hay to Black Dragon. I apologized, sorry, buddy, I've let you go hungry again. It's all my fault. Teacher Zhuang commented, this horse of yours is quite remarkable. It looks like a valuable steed. Where did you get it from? If anyone else had asked me this question, I would have ignored it. Perhaps it was the moment of closeness between us that made me unable to refuse her question. Black Dragon was originally a wild horse that I tamed. It's been following me ever since. Let me touch it. Seriously? She looks like a kid about to get a new toy. It's better not to. Black Dragon has a very bad temper. It even kicked someone to death before. Is it really that terrifying? I don't believe it. I want to touch it. Saying that, she approached Black Dragon and reached out her hand. Black Dragon's eyes widened with caution, taking a step back and giving a long neigh as it stood up on its hind legs. I quickly shouted, Black Dragon, behave. Friend. Black Dragon seemed to understand my words. It approached cautiously in a different direction. Teacher Zhuang, startled, had to retract the water elemental energy she had gathered. You frightened me. This horse is quite fiery. It seems to understand what you're saying. I don't know what's going on either. It's like we can communicate telepathically. Let's go back. Teacher Zhuang made a face at Black Dragon as she carried me back, and it couldn't help but. Translation cut off due to length restrictions. After a day, Feng Wen also woke up. After breakfast, he asked me, how are you? Are you okay, now? Your combat energy that day was so powerful. I should have been able to fight back, but your combat energy froze my meridians. I couldn't muster any strength. My internal injuries are mostly healed, and the sword wound on my chest is sealed. I should be fine in a few more days. Honestly, I admired his skills as well. He managed to pierce through my powerful defense. I realized I needed to improve my thunderous armor chi practice. What kind of combat energy are you practicing? Your defense is really strong. What's the point of being strong if you manage to break it? My spiral dragon combat energy is quite famous. It spirals like a tornado during an attack, capable of changing direction at will, and it has strong penetration power. I've never seen anyone able to take it heat-in. That day, I used all my spiral dragon combat energy combined with wind magic for acceleration, and I could barely breach your defense. When I first clashed with your defense, I even held back slightly to avoid injuring you. But even then, despite using all my strength, I couldn't completely break through. So, it was a spiral-style combat energy. No wonder it had such strong penetration power. It hurt me a bit, but my clothes were ruined by you. And my sword was broken by you. It's a draw. As we were discussing, Feng Yun and the Fire Brothers walked in. Feng Yun entered and exclaimed, "How's it going, you two? I heard from the Fire Brothers that you caused quite a scene that day." Feng Yun teased, "Look at you, can't you just be quiet for a moment? You've been like this since we were kids, always talking non-stop. Can you please be quiet for once?" Feng Yun retorted, "You've been bullying me since we were kids, not even letting me speak, huh?" Firestar asked in surprise, "Do you two know each other?" Feng Yun smiled slightly, "He's my cousin. We grew up together." One focused more on magic, while the other leaned toward martial arts. Fireflare said, "That's convenient. We're not strangers, then. Our situation will be tough from now on." Feng Yun became the class leader, thanks to both of you making it into the infirmary. I thought Lei Xiang was a sure bet, but unexpectedly, you appeared out of nowhere.